Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a great day so far and welcome to today's video. But not only today's video, also welcome to my brand new filming space. I'm all moved in. This is my first day filming here and it was a delight. It was a delight. I'm still trying to iron out a couple of things. I still need to cover off this window because as you can see, it's just glaring in and causing me a problem. But aside from that, I'm super comfortable. I'm super cozy and this just is giving me all of the welcoming vibes. So please get comfortable, make yourselves at home because today I'm going to be trying out the mega bucks expensive new Chanel Sublimage concealer. And not only that, I'm going to be putting it to the test against my current holy grail that is like a quarter almost of the price, the Huda Beauty concealer. So we're going to be doing an under eye battle. Is this really worth 85 whole human English pounds? Could it possibly be? I don't know. Let's find out. So according to Chanel, this new concealer is a radiance revealing skincare concealer, creamy and lightweight. It's exceptionally hydrating formula, melts onto the skin and instantly illuminates the eyes. It corrects the appearance of dark circles and smooths fine lines without creasing, all while caring for the delicate eye area. So this concealer is available in 10 shades, not enough, not nearly enough, but even more problematic than the small number of shades, for me at least, and I know for lots of you because you've told me, is the fact that there's like no description of the 10 shades available to be found anywhere. So I picked up shade 30 and it was ultimately a pretty blind guess. I watched a couple of reviews just to get an idea of the shades people were wearing. That wasn't very helpful because there was no one around my shade, you know, to compare it to. So it was a pretty blind guess. And I'm not overly obsessed and happy with the colour that I chose. I feel like it's a little pink leaning, but I have no idea what the undertones are because I can't find them listed anywhere. It was very unhelpful, especially when you're paying £85 for a concealer. Like, you don't want to get the wrong shade. You know, so that's problem number one that I've encountered. So when you compare the Chanel and the Huda, as far as their claims and the kind of stats about the two, they have some similarities, they have some differences. First up, the price, £85 versus 24. Second of all, that shade range, 10 shades. Your guess is as good as mine as to what those shades are and the undertones of them, versus 29 shades, all with excellent helpful descriptions. So already the Huda is off to quite the start. They have a very similar amount. Obviously the Huda is a liquid and the Chanel is more of a cream, but 9 mils in here, 10 grams in here. Pretty comparable amount. The Chanel slightly edges it with the weight. Now the Huda is a luminous matte, a natural matte finish, whereas the Chanel claims to have like a radiant reflective pearl finish to it, so a bit more luminosity or radiance under the eyes. Both of them claim to be like smoothing slash blurring on like lines and texture. The Chanel has buildable coverage. Who knows, really, generally, typically, whatever that means. Could mean something or nothing or everything, who knows. Whereas the Huda Beauty states medium to full. So again, a bit more transparency. When someone says something is buildable, I'm always like, buildable to what? From what? Be specific, you know, just tell us buildable to what? Both claim to be crease free, very, very important when it comes to concealer. I can promise you that this one is on me. We'll see about this one in a moment. Now the Chanel does have some like skincare claims and claims to be very hydrating and caring to your under eye area. The Huda doesn't really make any such claims, but it does have some extra claims in there that it's fragrance free, alcohol free. It's also vegan, water, sweat and transfer proof. So that's kind of where they differ. The Chanel doesn't have an overwhelming Chanel typical perfume scent to it, to my nose at least. It has a very, very light sort of skincare scent to it. So I will put the ingredients up on the screen so you can see what's in there and hopefully that's helpful to someone. The other thing that's worth kind of just noticing is the packaging. When it comes to luxury brands, packaging matters, packaging counts. Someone who's paying £85 for a concealer does not want to see light, cheap plastic packaging. That being said, at £24, the Huda concealer, it's not ginormous, it's a nice compact size, it is light and it is plastic, and you know, it doesn't look especially expensive or chic or anything, but it serves the purpose. The doe foot is very easy to use and comfortable and gentle and soft, and a nice size actually, and you know, the packaging kind of no frills, does what it says on the tin. Whereas the Chanel has this glass pot. It is very beautiful, very luxurious, very chic to look at, and it also comes accompanied by a little plastic spatula so that you can scoop your concealer out onto a palette or the back of your hand if you don't want to put your brushes in there and keep everything more hygienic. And it also comes with a mini angled brush to apply it with if that's what you choose to do. So you've kind of got options there as far as the application. What I will say, while this pot looks beautiful and nice to look at in my hand now, there is a design flaw in here. When you open this, it is everywhere. It is all in the cap. It has this little insert here that I kind of used the concealer that was on the back of this little, I didn't even want to open it because it's getting all over my hands. I let this sit for like a day, 2 days in fact, before I used it in the hope that it was going to sort itself out. It hasn't. I think I'm going to have to throw this lid away, and that might help because I feel like the lid, the little plastic insert cap, is actually making things worse rather than improving things. This has not been upside down, shaken, nothing. It's sat on my vanity for 2 days and it is all over the place. And at £85, I don't want like a single drop of that not going on my face, you know, that is an issue. And I feel like while it looks very luxurious, the experience is a mess, and that is a real shame. So points deducted for that. It looks and feels gorgeous, but once you open it, it doesn't feel very luxurious to be covered in like hundreds of pounds worth of concealer, you know? So I think that's everything that I have to tell you about these concealers. Now let's get on with the application. So I just wanted to show you a bit of a swatch comparison. So this is the Huda Beauty in the shade Cookie Dough. Yes, correct. And then here is the Chanel, which is definitely lighter than Cookie Dough, and it also is a little more like pinky, I think, to my eye. This is a neutral shade from Huda. The Chanel definitely a lot lighter and obviously not as neutral. Definitely like, I don't know, it looks so much lighter when I swatch it versus when I look at it in the container. I thought this is going to be like a bit too dark for what I wanted, so I'm interested to see how it actually looks on the eye. So I'm going to start off on this side with my Huda Beauty because this is the concealer that I know how she works, I know what I'm dealing with. So I'm going to do this side first, and I'm using my BK Beauty by Angie collab concealer brush, which is my favorite concealer brush at the moment, the one I have been loving recently. This concealer from Huda, I feel like it definitely does what it says on the tin. It gives me that full coverage, it gives me that sort of natural matte finish, and it doesn't crease, it wears beautifully, it doesn't budge, it feels nice and lightweight and hydrating under the eye. It literally does everything that it says that it claims to do. So I am going to set that with my usual Pat McGrath powder in the yellow banana shade, whichever you'd like to call it, and I'm using my Sonia G Detail Pro. I think some people might prefer me not to set my concealer when I'm doing reviews, but for me I just feel like it's a fair test where I'm only changing one variable, which is the concealer that I'm using. Everything else stays exactly as I would usually use a concealer, and I would always set my concealer. So this just helps me really see what the concealer is doing, how I would normally wear it, and how the other products I would usually use. So I've completely cleaned that brush off, and I'm going to use the exact same brush into that little bit of excess that's in the lid there. I'm going to start off with a tiny amount because I feel like this being that sort of cream consistency, you are only going to want a very small amount, and already I can see a little of this Chanel concealer is definitely going a long way. I think I typically might even prefer a sponge with this concealer, just because it is definitely quite a bit thicker than what I'm used to with my concealers. I think a finger would work nicely as well to warm this up and really work it into the skin. I'm actually quite surprised by that coverage. Obviously this side is going to look a bit brighter because the colour is much lighter than this side, but I think you can also see, although I've set this side, this is way more radiant than the Huda side. I'm going to use this new Chanel Everywhere Else. I would typically apply concealer also. It's kind of tricky. I feel like I'd need to find a more precise brush than this to work in these areas. Like normally most concealers, you know, they come with a doe foot, which helps you apply it quite strategically, whereas this, because it comes, you know, even the brush it comes with, I think you're going to struggle to be quite precise with that one. But I can't really use this tiny little brush. I need a handle, you know. Okay, so then exactly the same, I'm going to be using my Pat McGrath powder and my same cleaned Sonia G brush to set the concealer on this side, as well as the other places I applied it. Okay, so this is the starting point with the Chanel side and the Huda side. I definitely think this side will look brighter, and that obviously isn't a plus or a minus, it's just the colour difference, which I guess really is a plus for Huda because you have such a better shade range to choose from that it's much easier, especially with the shade descriptions online, to choose your correct shade for the Huda than it was for the Chanel, which is just a pure punt in the dark. And I've ended up with a shade that I can use but is potentially a bit lighter than what I would choose, but it is giving me a nice bright under eye. I will say, just looking at them now, I feel like the Chanel looks slightly smoother. Trying to get nice and close for you. I think maybe the Huda slightly covered a bit more. I didn't obviously build up the Chanel side, although Chanel claimed that it is a buildable concealer. I feel like the Chanel side is maybe ever so slightly smoother, is it? But I don't feel like it's quite got the coverage of the Huda side. I feel like the Huda is giving a little more coverage. I do feel like the Chanel side feels like more fresh and hydrated. The Huda is a very light concealer. It doesn't feel heavy by any means, but I feel that the Chanel side is definitely feeling noticeably like fresh and cool from that hydrating effect, which I'm definitely noticing. At the moment, I feel like it's very hard to tell the difference. There's definitely a slight radiance still peeking through even when this side has been set with powder. So there's a definite like slight brighter and more luminous quality to the Chanel versus the more matte Huda side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish off the rest of my makeup, and then we'll come back in a couple of hours, do another video, have my lunch, and let's see what this concealer is doing. The proof is always in the creasing when it comes to concealer. Okay, so we are back. I have finished my makeup. I filmed a couple more bits and pieces that I had to do and did some editing and had my lunch most importantly. And I've been checking out both sides like really close up in the mirror. Neither side is creasing like noticeably at all. When I sort of stretch out my face like this, and really look under there, there's like on the Chanel side, the teensiest settle into a couple of like my lines here that is barely noticeable. I can't show you on camera because you just won't be able to see, but there's basically nothing really to report. There's no creasing or anything like that at all. Really nothing has changed. I still feel like the Huda is giving just a hint more coverage. I could have built the Chanel side up, but because it was so thick, it just didn't feel like, I just didn't feel like that was a good plan. I didn't feel like that was going to go well. I think I will prefer using a sponge with this concealer just because it is really thick, and it did take me noticeably longer to kind of get it set down, laid down where I wanted it than the Huda that I'm typically used to. It was kind of tricky to get a tiny amount on a brush, so I think there's going to be a bit of a learning curve with the application, but there's really not much of a difference that I can even notice. What do you guys think? Super duper close up. Huda, Chanel. I feel like at this price point, I should be noticing a difference. This is the thing. It should be like wildly different, like 4 times better, you know? I'm really not noticing. There's nothing I could tell you that I'm noticing. I don't know if it's my imagination. I feel like this side looks slightly smoother, but I do think the Huda is a very smooth concealer as well. So yeah, do you guys notice a difference? A £60 difference? I don't know that I do. Okay, so here's the thing. These concealers have now been on for a few hours, and I've been like going back and forth in the mirror and really getting close up and trying to see, is there much of a difference? And the answer is really no. There's really not much difference between these two other than like the price and a couple of the claims. I feel like they look almost undiscernible as to which is which at this point. I feel like if I, you know, wiped my memory, Vampire Diaries style, I wouldn't be able to tell which was which. Maybe the Chanel sort of started off feeling fresher and more hydrating, but now a few hours later, that feeling has pretty much gone and they don't feel any different under the eye. I will say that hydrating, fresh, cool feeling on the Chanel side faded pretty quickly. It hasn't stayed there, it's not there now. I found the application of the Huda way quicker, easier, like less messy than the Chanel. Obviously opening this, it's a mess, it gets everywhere, all over the place. It's also quite tricky to just get a really tiny amount on a brush and really strategically place it. That's a little trickier. So as far as the application, I definitely prefer the Huda. It was quicker, easier. I feel like I'm using less product and I'm easier to control the app. It's easier to control the application more. Also, the Chanel is very thick, so I just don't like the feeling of that going on. It actually, once it's blended into the skin, it melts beautifully into the skin, blends very, very easily, but initially it kind of feels a bit daunting because it's such a thick, creamy feeling formula. It feels like it's going to be a bit more work, and it is just because of the pot packaging, but it does blend and melt into the skin beautifully. It's just, you have to, it's a little more work is what I'm saying. But as far as the finished article, as far as creasing, as far as how it feels on the skin, as far as how smooth everything looks, there is little to no difference that I can notice whatsoever between the two. The Chanel is slightly more radiant looking, which I enjoy, but is that enough to justify the difference between the two in price? No, I am slightly put off like to use this one just because of the mess that it's making and how much of a waste that is going to be as far as the expense of this concealer and like how much is actually going all over me and the counter and my hands when I'm using it. That would definitely be a big drawback for me. So for me, the Huda wins. Will I still use this? Yes, because I paid £85 for it. You better believe I'm going to use it, even if it's on my husband or my cat, or I didn't even have a cat, but I'm going to use it on someone because I like it. I think it's looking beautiful under the eyes, but I certainly don't like it any more than I do the Huda Beauty at almost a quarter of the price. So there's that. I think for me, if I was going to spend £85 like frequently repurchasing a concealer, I definitely want to see it wowing me. Like the difference between my favourite mid-range concealer and this one, it should be noticeable. Like I should have put this on and really been blown away and wowed. And I liked it, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't really giving me enough to justify the price and make me want to buy it again, especially with the tricky bits around the shades and the tricky bits around the packaging and that price tag. So yeah, for me, I think the Huda wins. But please let me know what you think. What are your thoughts? Do you prefer the Chanel? Could you see more of a difference than I could? Please let us know what your shade recommendations are. If you've seen swatches or you've got your hands on this to try swatches and you know anything about what these shades and undertones are, please help us out in the comment section down below. I know that would be very much appreciated for lots of us. So I hope you found this review helpful, and I would love to see you in the next one. Otherwise, take care for now. Bye 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 bye.